Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Embrace Fertility podcast. I'm Naomi Wolfson, and today I'm going to be interviewing fertility expert Jaclyn Downs. We're going to be discussing inflammation as a primary source of fertility challenges. Jaclyn is a functional nutrigenomics consultant and is the author of the book Enhancing Fertility Through Functional Medicine, Using Nutrigenomics to Solve Unexplained Infertility, which was published by Taylor and Francis this year. Jaclyn uses genomic interpretation and functional lab testing, along with a meticulous intake consultation to assist practitioners and clients to move past puzzling roadblocks and address root causes of inflammation and imbalance. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It feels really good to finally be here. We've talked about it for a while, and I'm just really excited to chat with you just because I feel like we've been friends for a little while, but never actually made this happen.
And it feels like now is the perfect time as well because your book is out in the world. And so we're going to be talking today about the title we've picked. And we were going through loads of different titles because there's so much information that you have that you could share with us. And we've whittled it down to talking about inflammation as a primary source of fertility challenges and how to address that. So let's just dive in. So why do you think inflammation is such an important topic to address when it comes to infertility?
I feel like the current conventional model and standard is to measure hormones and then just force hormones into certain ranges to achieve pregnancy. And the hormones are just the messengers. So we need to go further upstream and to find out why the body has felt the need to temporarily halt mating ability and reproductive capacities. And inflammation is at the heart of all chronic imbalances and chronic conditions, and fertility is not an exemption. And so when we have inflammation, our body is trying to use energy to deal with whatever is causing the inflammation. And so it's putting reproductive capacity on the back burner. And so if we can identify where the inflammation is coming from, we can move the body into a state of vitality and energy output rather than energy consumption and repair.
And how do you go about doing that?
There are many ways, but for me, it always starts with a really, as you said, meticulous, detailed intake, because every single person is different. You could have, 5 different people with miscarriages, but 5 different reasons behind that. And so by doing an hour long, sometimes hour and a half long intake to assess this person's previous exposures, previous emotional maybe traumas or just events, and diet and lifestyle, along with all the current stuff, diagnoses, and then where they want to go, you can get a really good idea for what is likely the root cause or causes of this person's challenges. And then I usually recommend some functional testing to verify if that is an issue, and if so, to what degree.
And have you got any case studies that you could share with us? I'm obviously not giving people's personal details, but the type of clients that you might work with and the issues that they bring to you, and then what you've uncovered to help them sort of move forward on their fertility journey.
Well, doing let's see, there's so many to choose from, but I always like to go back to this one client. She was one of my favorite clients, such a sweetheart. And I've used this example in the past, and I actually mention it in my book as well, because it was so insidious. So she came to me and her periods were all over the place. And she had like a heartbreaking number of miscarriages. I think she was at around 11.
Wow.
And yeah, and she we got her periods beautiful. She was just amazed at how like boring and textbook her period was. But we did her genetics, and Where I was really, really seeing a lot of variation was in histamine. And I never, ever would have thought to look there because she wasn't having your typical hay fever symptoms. And so, usually I can ask people, do you have allergies? And they're like, well, no, because, they don't get seasonal allergies. But really, estrogen and histamine feed each other, and histamine can cause gastrointestinal upset. Histamine can cause circadian rhythm disruption. It can cause nausea, vomiting. It can cause all kinds of stuff. And so, because I looked at her genes, I was like, okay, let's investigate this histamine stuff. And so we went on some histamine degrading supplements and did a lower histamine diet, and that was what was the key thing to her success in her next pregnancy.
Wow. And it's so, I think that's what so like fascinates me about your work. That is I imagine she'd gone and she'd spoken to other professionals and sort of done all the sort of standard tests, but because so little is known about miscarriage, and generally being over here in the UK, until you've had 3 miscarriages, they don't even investigate. They don't even question why you might be having miscarriages. They're just like, meh, not even going to look into that until you've had 3. And then the tests and the things they do are still very, very basic. So it's so interesting to really look at the whole person and everything that could be contributing to that. So how did you get into this field?
My previous career was in birth work, but I always had an interest in nutrition. And I talk about the whole evolution of where I am today in my book. So my dad was a nutritional biochemist. And, I was saying in the book how, like, I pretty guaranteed that I was the only person in junior high in the early 1990s that knew what a probiotic was, and, essential fatty acids. And my dad was just always outside the conventional nutrition box, the USDA, lobbied box. And but I didn't want to go to school and learn nutrition that's sponsored by the USDA and the American Dietetic Association, just because I knew it wasn't true nutrition for what's really good for our bodies. So I fell into birth work, and I became a doula, a birth doula, and I loved it. I'd never considered myself an activist of any sort for anything until I read this book called Immaculate Deception. And it was basically talking about, making birth a medical event rather than trusting the woman's body. And it was just riveting. It was like the first time, like, it rocked my world. And so I became a doula. And then it turns out that there is a world-renowned midwife here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. She teaches all over the world and she's able to do twin births and multiple breech births, and she teaches about all of that stuff. And so I worked with her. And when I was working with her, she works primarily with the Plain community, a lot of Amish and Mennonite people. And I, in my early 20s, had no idea that fertility challenges and miscarriages were so commonplace, because it's not just openly talked about, or at least it wasn't back then. We didn't have forums and threads and all this internet stuff so much. And so that I saw how she helped these women. She would address, like, hey, have you checked your house for radon? Like, I hadn't even heard of radon. And then and then she also was really, really very focused on nutrition. I love this story because she had a woman who was turned 40 during her pregnancy with twins, and she went full term, and she had like a 7'3" and a 7 pound babies, because the midwife supported her in her nutrition. So one thing for all you listeners out there, like 2 greens per meal is what I remember her saying. So I just saw how nutrition made a huge impact, and also how toxins really, really affected fertility in a negative way. And I went on to get my master's in holistic nutrition, and just sort of dovetailed to where I am with my passion for birth work and my nutrition knowledge. And then I started working for a naturopath, studying MTHFR, which is the first gene most people have heard about. And I almost named my book MTHFR as a gateway gene, because it's the first gene that people usually learn about. And it also introduces people to the topic that, or the idea that your nutrition is greatly influences your genes, and your genes are influenced by your nutritional status, and toxins. I went on later to learn about toxins, and I talk about detoxification a lot in my book. So MTHFR research escalated into the whole methylation pathway, and then how the methylation pathway is involved with this, and the transsulfuration pathway, and everything. And so I talk about all of it in my book. So that's the long story short of, well, not so short, of how I got to where I am today and have published a book.
And just tell us a little bit about your book.
I wanted to address common but lesser known causes of inflammation and something called oxidative stress, which damages your cells. So it damages your cellular, the cell structure, but also the information contained in the cell. Because like I said, everybody's just focused on the hormones, but really, why are the hormones out of balance? Or why is the body feeling this threat, like it's not a safe time to procreate? And with the functional nutrition background and the nutrigenomics background that I have, I saw that a lot of it is issues in the detoxification processes and pathways, or histamine or oxalates, and I am seeing this with almost every client that I question, mold. Mold is not to be taken lightly. And there actually is a PhD, his name is Matthew Pratt Hyatt. You can type that in your internet search and look up mycotoxins. So mold emits these toxins called mycotoxins to claim its territory. So that's why mold inside is very much more problematic and toxic than mold that you would just find outside on a stone or something like that. And so there is a lot of research on how mold and mycotoxins affect fertility. So that's something that is really hot in functional medicine circles right now is mycotoxins. And I love my mold chapter. Short and sweet, a lot of actionable steps.
And in terms of actionable steps, if someone is sort of new to the topic, obviously everyone should buy your book, put that out there. But in terms of people like taking these steps and sort of starting to understand this topic and starting to see what they could do, what are, say, 3 things you'd recommend that people can sort of start doing today to help themselves?
So the very first thing I would do is to, let's see, they're both the first and second thing, which are both, is the first rock I usually address is making sure that mold and mycotoxins are not an issue in your current environment, whether that's your work or your home or your church or your car, but also within your body. You can do mycotoxin testing to see what's in your body, because you're never going to cross that threshold into vitality, and your cells aren't going to feel that they have the wherewithal if they're constantly being burdened, and your immune system's constantly being burdened. And so just check that box off. Make sure that's a huge rock to look under. Mold is not an issue, and if it is, that's the first thing we need to take care of. In conjunction with that are avoiding toxins. So, upgrade the quality of your body care products, upgrade your cleaning products, and then the food that you're eating, for what you can afford to buy organic or chemical free, GMO free. Like, just, this is better than that approach. Just whatever you can afford, whatever is available to you, because the less toxins that we have coming in, the less your liver needs to deal with that, and it'll have more energy and wherewithal to make sure that your hormones are doing what they're supposed to do. Because when the toxins come in, your liver's like, well, we know what the hormones are. They're familiar, but these toxins aren't so much. So let's spend our energy dealing with those toxins, and we'll put the hormones on the back burner. So making sure that you are avoiding the toxins and the mold and mycotoxins is going to be like my first 2 recommendations. And then I do have a chapter on addressing stress. And so that for sure is a very real thing. And so it's much easier to say avoid stress, but if you can figure out to how to manage it with mindful breathing or going outside in nature, just these little teeny tiny things add up to making a difference in the long run.
And I think that's what's so interesting is it's about having that holistic approach, because I think it can be when people sort of, you get to the sort of year point of trying to conceive, and then it's like, what am I going to do to help myself, or approaching going into treatment possibly, and you can become a bit obsessed with just focusing completely on like, I'm going to do my diet. So people just focus all their energy there, but they're still working like 12-hour days and drinking at the weekends and doing whatever. It's more about having like a balanced approach of, let's support holistically the body and mind across all the ways, and to support yourself going through, because also by doing one, you're supporting your body to do the other as well, because if you're really stressed out, it's really hard to then eat well and spend the time to look after yourself, and vice versa.
And actually the other really really important thing, and these clients are my unicorn clients, they're like, well, I'm thinking about having a baby in a year and I just want to know what to do to optimize, because we pass our toxins on in utero and it through breast milk, and our babies are just these tiny little containers, and so they are being passed our lifetime of toxic exposures that our bodies haven't properly detoxified and cleared out. And studies show, especially mycotoxins, absolutely 100% pass through breast milk. And your audience probably has heard of the study 10 Americans, but I just want to reiterate, they took the cord blood of 10 brand new first breath babies and they tested their cord blood, and there were hundreds of chemicals in the cord blood, including Teflon and flame retardants and VOCs. And so the more that you can optimize and clear your body and make sure that you're repleting your nutrients, the better your fertility is going to be, but also beyond the fertility, the robustness and health of your child is going to be able to meet its potential.
And that's what's fascinating, isn't it? It's like you're investing that time and energy, not just for you, but for future generations, and not just the one generation, ongoing. And the things that you put in place are obviously going to be there, because it's generally you never go back, isn't it? Like when you detox, I detox all the chemicals out of my house, and now I find it really difficult, like going to like restaurants where they're using like cleaning sprays on the table next to you, and they're like, like spray it like 20 times on the table, and you can just this like cloud of chemicals just comes over, and it impacts me so much, and I'm just like, why? Like, just I think you learn about something and you understand how it impacts your body, and then it's like you cross the line. So it's like you do the research once and you make those decisions, find the products that work well for you and your home and your body, and then that's it. Now I've got the brands that I buy, and I will continue to buy them ongoing unless someone turns around and says there's something better in the future. But it's like you invest that time, and then it's done.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's a step-by-step process. This is better than that for sure. And the thing about, like the spraying the chemicals, and I know a lot of times people just feel like it's so unfair. Like I'm eating the proper diet and I'm doing all the natural things, and like why is it not happening for me? And this person's over here eating meatball subs every night and drinking beer, and then they go and they don't have any issues. But that's where the genetics can really shine, because maybe your toxic bucket is so much smaller just as a genetic predisposition than somebody else who their body just more readily clears it, or maybe just is better at storing it and sweeping it under the rug. And so knowing your genetics can sort of help you to understand where your weaknesses are and where you should really focus your attention on, your diet, lifestyle, environment, that whole thing.
And how with the testing, in terms of like genetic testing, like what exactly would you be testing for, and what might it show up?
So the genetic test kit that I use I like the test kit and also the software that is in tandem with it. Looks at hundreds of thousands of genetic variants. And these can show predispositions for things like iron dysregulation. And these are all separate chapter topics in my book. These are like the big ones. These are like the big 10. So iron dysregulation. So many women are told that they have anemia and their doctor gives them iron. But if they're eating meat, and in this modern day world where things are fortified with iron, it's not an iron acquisition issue, it's an iron utilization issue. And so their body is not properly using the iron, and the iron's getting stuck somewhere and causing inflammation. Just like if you leave an iron rod out on your front lawn, it's going to oxidize. And so iron that's improperly used is going to oxidize, and that's going to cause inflammation, and it's not going to get to where it needs to be. So your blood's going to look low, but it'll be in excess in tissues, causing inflammation. Another chapter is on oxalates. Oxalates, especially if you have been on antibiotics a lot in your life, or have had mold exposures, or you just have these like weird pains, or especially if intercourse is painful. I just had a woman fill out her intake form and said it's very painful and uncomfortable. It burns and it feels like broken glass. And I was like, well, oxalates, huge flag for oxalates. And oxalates can really affect your hormones because, and I guess this is going to get really biochemical here, but basically they affect your sulfation, the level of sulfate you have, and you need your hormones need to be sulfated. So if you have a lot of oxalates going on in the body, you're not going to have enough sulfate for hormonal balance. Plus, those oxalates are going to create pain because they're creating these jagged little crystals, mostly known in the form of kidney stones. But and I always want to double check this for reference because it's such a small thing. It's actually 0.5%, not 5%, 0.5% of oxalate issues present with kidney stones. And so those jagged crystals can get deposited anywhere in your body. They can get in the thyroid and cause low thyroid functioning. They can get in the ear canals and cause vertigo. They can get in the joints and cause joint pain, and the tissues and cause tissue pain. And they like to form around the pelvic bowl. And so that's why if you have like recurrent UTIs, or if you have any like interstitial cystitis or painful intercourse, those are things that sort of tip me off that like oxalates might be an issue. And let's delve into that a little more and perhaps do some testing. So the iron, the oxalates, and I already mentioned the histamine, I mentioned the mold. Another really big one is you're not using the fats you're getting. Yeah, you're eating all of this wonderful, grass-fed butter, and you're doing all of your, essential fatty acids, and your walnuts, and your, all your good oils, your olive oil. But if your body's not able to use it, it's not going to have the raw materials to make hormones, and also for liver health and brain health and all of that. And then that's going to cause inflammation. So all of these things definitely contribute to inflammation and imbalance in the body. And I wanted to let the world know about them and oxidative stress in itself. I want oxidative stress to be common terminology, just like inflammation is.
Yeah. I think that thing is like that. I think most people now, if you said the word inflammation, people would have some kind of understanding, or rather, let's rephrase that. People going through infertility, I imagine, would have some kind of understanding of what that meant on a very maybe basic level. I mean, it's getting that it is more than mainstream. And like you said, like then if oxidative stress is like this next level of people being like, what does that mean? How does that impact me? And it's going to be really interesting to see how, like, in another 20 years time, if you look back to even like 20 years ago, the knowledge that we didn't have, and like you said, like you're the only person who knew about probiotics, and now I imagine everybody knows what probiotic is. Even if they don't take them, they'll understand what it is, why you're supposed to take them, how to take them, where you could find them. So yeah, it's going to be so fascinating, like how that shifts, and also how functional medicine and traditional medicine, how that shifts in regards to how we treat fertility over the next few years. Because there are, like, especially when it comes to recurrent miscarriage, there's so much we don't know and so many massive gaps if it can be that we're like, do these tests, it could show up this, then we change these things and increase the chances of healthy pregnancy. It's so exciting. What's
Yeah.
in terms of everything that you've researched, everything that you've studied, everything that you're sharing, what do you think is the the biggest thing? If you could just share like one thing with people and be like, oh my god, like I wish everyone who's trying and not succeeding at the moment to get and stay pregnant, what would you have them learn or do?
Wow, that's like asking me my favorite song. I think
You
all
can,
of them.
this can carry on for the rest of the conversation. If it's like 8 things, that's absolutely fine.
So, what are just like a few basic things people can do to support their fertility?
Yeah.
And prevent miscarriage, hopefully. Um, well, read my book. And I'm not, just because there's everything that I feel and think about answering this question is in that book. But again, avoidance of the toxins. Yeah, you can upregulate your detox pathways and know how your genes detox, but really just avoiding them first off, because this world is just more and more so, there's just more toxins every day that we're exposed to, and our bodies were not designed to handle that many toxins. And so avoidance definitely would be the first. Second would be, as one of my chapters is titled, don't just eat a healthy diet, eat a nourishing diet. So count your nutrients. Instead of counting calories, just make sure you're getting a wide variety of phytonutrients and minerals and vitamins, because especially when you're in that first trimester and all you want to eat is bread and crackers, you're going to have the reserves to withstand that, and also to pass on to the baby, because I say in my book, you can't pour from an empty cup. So optimal nutrition and avoidance of toxins would be the big ones for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was pregnant with my second, the only liquid I could drink when I was pregnant with Vivi was this really expensive raspberry pink lemonade. And it was ridiculously expensive, but they sold it like in our local shop at the end of the road. And it was the only thing I could keep down. I couldn't drink
Wow.
water, I couldn't drink, like I literally couldn't drink anything apart from this one particular lemonade. And it obviously like just full of sugar and not the thing I would normally drink, but it's the only thing my body was like, yes, this will, if you drink this, you'll be fine. Drink anything else, it's coming straight back up. So
Mm-hmm.
it definitely feels like if you've prepared in advance to being pregnant and get your body in that really strong place as well, then no matter how your pregnancy is, at least your body's got those reserves, like you said.
Yeah, well, studies show, fertility optimization not only enhances chances of getting pregnant, but also how well you do in your pregnancy, and also birth outcomes. A lot of that has to do with nutritional status, and that's one reason why the statistics show that certain demographics have a poorer birth outcome, uh, because these are less, they're not, they don't have the funds or the availability, in food deserts and that kind of stuff. And so that's a whole different topic. And then also, just like I said, the robustness of your child, that just because with, you know, allergies have increased of all sorts, and learning disorders and behavior problems, and just, I just feel like our kids are just more sickly than they have ever been. And I think you probably heard the statistic too, where it is said that this is the first time in history that the parents are expected to outlive children. And I don't know, I don't have the study or anything like that, but it's said. And it makes sense, because at least like we had foods, even though we had cereal, it wasn't all genetically modified, and it wasn't just, as it was more pure than it is today. And so we have a stronger foundation, than a lot of children are able to get these days.
Yeah. I remember seeing one of your posts where it says that IVF won't create healthy eggs. And so the work that you're doing and putting in, how far in advance to someone doing IVF do you recommend they're sort of doing this work? Or is it kind of more, just start as soon as you can and you're gaining those benefits? Or is there kind of like a long lead time going in?
Ideally, the longer the better. Like everything you do in your adolescence, and especially with the adolescent diet, just processed food and sugar. But everything that you do, and the sooner that you start, the better your chances are, and better health as well, and longevity. But the rule of thumb is ideally a minimum of 6 months. But if people want a baby yesterday, then 3 months would be like the absolute minimum, because as far as having your optimizing your sperm and supporting egg health, all of that takes roughly 3 to 4 months to come to fruition, to make a baby. And so you want to make sure that you're laying the foundation to make sure that that timeline is not, you can detoxify your body. And for me, that's the biggest thing. If we're going to upregulate your detox pathways, we want to do that before you get pregnant, because we don't want to have all these toxins that are stirred up, and then you get pregnant, and then that's the baby's more vulnerable to that. So yeah, very, very minimum 3 months. So I know sometimes it's not wonderful to hear, but like, okay, if you can, I'm not going to make you do anything, but if you can stop trying for a couple months and, actually try to keep from getting pregnant, we can really do the work on your body that your body is likely desiring, because our body was designed to procreate, and it was designed to heal itself. And so I can help my clients to find what is the body is. I can help my clients find what their bodies are saying that they either don't want and need to get rid of, or that they are requiring more of.
Yeah, and fill in, because I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's not just about taking away things, but adding in the things that are missing as well, and to create that true balance within the body. Fantastic. So how can people get in touch with you, and how can they buy your book?
It is right there front and center on my website, jaclyndowns.com, JACLYNDOWNS. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Functional Fertility Solutions.
Fantastic. And so you have your book, and then you also do one-to-one consultations.
Yes, and I also do genomic interpretations. They are not mutually exclusive. They are also not required, necessary for both. But I have some clients that just want to know what their genes say. And currently, my interpretation package includes about a 25-page summary. So these things take me hours, but they are very detailed. You can go to my Google business page, and you can read, I have like all these reviews of like how my genomic interpretation has helped people. And then I do have clients that don't do the genetics. They just want the one-to-one. They want some lab testing. But really, ideally, you're going to get a broader picture and a better foundation doing both. But yes, so I have the book. I do consultations. I also do consultations with practitioners too. And then I do the genomic interpretation packages as well.
Fantastic. It has been amazing having you on today. And I'm so glad we managed to get a date in the diary and finally do this. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we sign off today?
I think you're in a really good place, because Naomi is wonderful, and she has a lot of heart, and she's really, really passionate about what she does, and the way that she wants to share her information with the world.
Oh, thank you, lovely. Well, all the details are going to be below, with all the links in the show notes, either on the podcast notes or on the YouTube channel. So please do go and follow Jaclyn and go and buy her book. If you're listening to the Embrace Fertility podcast for the first time, please do subscribe to be the first to know when a new episode comes live, and come and join my mailing list at embracefertility.co.uk for lots of mind, body, fertility freebies. See you next time.